Hey
Hello,
there.
everyone. How you doing,
Hey
Phil?
everyone, it's Phil. How you guys doing tonight? Thank you for being here. We'll give it a minute in case we have a
Sure.
few late people hopping on, which inevitably happens. So we've got Jerry and Zach from homesale.plus. They're going to give us a great demo. Hey Janet, good to see you. Appreciate you being here. We will kind of save the questions for the end, which I'm sure you guys will have a few. So when I first met Jerry and Zach, I loved the product because really this is kind of how I got started in real estate myself back several years ago. It was a more manual process, so it was very intriguing to me. Hey, Augustina, good to see you. Thank you. Appreciate everyone being here. And it does two things. It gives you a good shot to kind of get your listing sold if it's been languishing, or, if you're prospecting, it gives you something different to talk about, with a potential seller. The other thing it does is it helps you meet a lot of buyers, right? I mean, only about, 55 to 60% of the listings actually sell this way, but, you might pick up a buyer or two, and then, it's certainly worthwhile. So kind of with that, I'll turn it over to Jerry and Zach, and we'll let them get going, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. Excited to be here. Excited to show you Home Sale Plus. I think you're going to find it something that's very exciting and valuable. And for the reasons and many of the reasons and more that Phil talked about. So just to give you a little background, our platform has been up and running for about 4.5 years. We've done a little over 1,000 listings on the platform, and it's really been quite exciting to see something that we had a vision many years ago to create. And at this time, it feels like the market's right. And it's something that agents really need because in this environment, I don't need to tell you, I'm sure you already understand this, but it's super competitive. And as Phil was saying, when you can separate yourself and bring value in showing something to a seller that is different and makes a lot of sense, it's like fresh air to them. I mean, literally, we've heard that from sellers. So, this is really going to give you a leg up, and we're excited to show it to you. So, what we do is a couple things that we do. Our flagship service we call Flexbid. That's for your everyday, ordinary, standard listing. You're going to put it in the MLS as a standard listing. It's, a home that can qualify for conventional VA, potentially FHA financing, where the buyers can, offer anything they'd like, including price, days to close, inspection, if they want, yes or no, finance contingencies, and anything else they'd like to offer, as in any standard transaction, except for the first time, everything is visible to everyone in real time. Seller is under no obligation to accept an offer, regardless of how high the prices or how great the terms are. And typically, the property, there's usually an offer period that's set that you'll have in your MLS agent remarks of like around 14 days is the average. And so, although it may say, all offers need to be in by 4 o'clock on the 16th of May, it then says, however, at seller's discretion, an offer can be accepted anytime. So it's total flexibility for your seller and for you. We also do auctions, and a lot of agents just have never participated in an auction. Auctions are great when you have a property that's going to be an investor grade. It's going to have to be bought with cash. It's going to be investors buying it, and there's no reason to offer it with contingencies. In an auction, you have the seller in an addendum to your listing agreement, our addendum, auction addendum. We're going to have a reserve that you determine with the seller. The seller signs that saying, if I hit, 200,000 or above, I'm going to sell. So they're locked into a price they have to sell at. There are absolutely no contingencies. The buyer adds a 10% buyer premium and pays all closing costs, transfer, recordation, title fees, everything. And the nice thing about auctions, I used to love auctions. I used to work with auction companies all the time, but they would want to, try. I'd have to fight to get 2% on a referral. What we do is out of the buyer premium, you're going to put in 2% offered, because this is an auction. So we can talk about the compensation in your MLS. It's going to have a place for auctions, and you're going to put in 2% to the buyer agent. You're going to get 4%. If there's no buyer agent, you get 5%. So, agents were selling the average auction properties with like $300,000. So agents are making very good money, and it's just the best way for your client. So once again, the main thing we're going to be showing you today is Flexbid. That's your everyday, ordinary owner, usually owner occupant to owner occupant, sale. But we just want to let you know that there's several ways you can use this to make money, and also to get more clients. Here's an example of a Keller Williams office we work with in the Mid-Atlantic. This property, for instance, the seller was going to put it on at 430,000, thinking that that was basically, she'd end up probably getting somewhere between 4 and 410 net. Well, the Emmerich listed it and used our platform because the market was softening and they were afraid they're going to even go backwards. She ended up putting it on. They put it on for 350,000 using our pricing strategy, drove 170 buyers through. And this is a vacant renovated home in 2 weeks. So about 11 plus a day. They ended up with 17 people making offers and battling it out, going back and forth, seeing each other's offers and then going from there. And they ended up getting 440 net and a 455 contract price. So the seller ended up with 30 plus thousand more than she expected. And this is a good example. They really felt if they listed this, they would never have been able to get more than around 430 contract price in the end. So it worked its magic. This is an example of why you would do an auction. Cynthia came with the property. She was saying she was going to put on Flexbid. She said, she was talking about the property, probably mostly investors looking at it. When she told us more about the property, we said, just do an auction. Your seller will love it. They'll set a reserve. In this case, the seller wanted 270 net. They set a reserve. They didn't pay any closing costs. They didn't pay any commission. And it ended up, she put it on for a 2-week marketing period and a 3-day bidding period. During that bidding period, 175 incremental bids, and they ended up with 58,000 more, 328,000, 58,000 more than their 270 reserve. And the buyer premium was added to that, and all the closing costs paid by the buyer. So, a great example about a property, when it makes sense, is going to be cash buyers. You would want to auction it.
And one thing I just would like to add there for everyone on, if you were to take a turnkey property like this one and put it on an auction, your pool of buyers shrinks tremendously because you're only getting cash buyers. The beautiful part about Flexbid is, while it's transparent and has that urgency, you're going to cast a much wider net because everyone can compete in a Flexbid, cash, conventional, VA, FHA. So you have a much bigger pool of buyers to get a higher price and better terms for your client.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to know when to use which one. One of the things that we do, and this is really exciting, we see agents get their first listings using our platform, and experienced agents getting more listings. We help you create a blue ocean strategy. Everyone wants to have a blue ocean strategy. If you are in an industry where everyone is basically doing everything like we do in real estate, over on the left side of the screen is where everybody's fighting it out. 130,000 agents in Florida, are all fighting for the same business with the same basic method of transacting. So really, in this type of a market, it's so powerful. Like, these are the times where you need to be different. The times of I'm the greatest, I sell this and that, those times are changing. Consumers now want to know what their options are. And when you move over to the blue ocean, Suddenly, when you're talking to a seller, you're an expert at something that I don't care who the best top agent in your market is. If they're not offering this, you have more value because you're bringing them something they've never heard about. You're bringing them a new game on a new playing field with new rules, and they love it because you'll see with the way we present to a seller, it just makes total sense. Zach is a good example. Zach, you want to talk about your experience coming into real estate and using the
Yeah.
platform?
Yeah, thank you. So I've been licensed for about 2.5 years. And prior to getting into real estate, I was in the car industry. Of course, Jerry's my father. So I heard, growing up, heard him on the phone and different things like that, but I had no prior real estate experience. When I got into real estate, I was quickly able to realize and understand the pitfalls and why it didn't make sense. And so I was able to learn Home Sale Plus and start cold calling for sale by owners on Zillow and expired leads. And I was able to call them. If you are cold calling, they are tough to get across to. Number one, they do not want to talk to a listing agent. The typical answer is, hey, if you have a buyer, bring them by, I'll talk to you. But if not, do not waste your time. And I was able to tell them, hey, look, I know you're getting calls from 50 plus agents. I know that's frustrating. However, if you give me a few minutes of your time, I'm going to tell you about something I can guarantee no agent has ever talked to you about before. And that just gives a response. If you say that to anyone, they're going to go, what do you have that no one's ever told me about? And I will say, no one ever asked me how long I've been in the business, how many houses I've sold. They saw the value. And just like Jerry said, I never say it's because I'm better than someone or whoever it is. It's because I'm different than. And when you talk to a seller, you give them fresh air, something that makes sense. You're going to find that your conversations go a long way. So often I would have clients on the phone. I would be sitting on the beach on vacation or at a Starbucks, a 5-minute phone call, and they want a listing agreement to sign with me. And I haven't even met them until I'm putting a lockbox on their property. And time again, they would say, well, what do you have? What do you have that 50 other agents haven't told me? Or you have 30 seconds, kid. And 30 minutes later, I know their family and where they want to move and their dog's name and all these different things I'm not even asking. They're just telling me. And it's because I brought value, and it completely separated me as a new agent. I always say, without the platform, there's no shot I would have gotten even a handful of those listings, let alone 14 for sale by owners and 1 expired lead in my first year of doing business. And so it took my business to another level immediately as a new agent with no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, it's powerful. And it gives you something, like Zach said, it is a very powerful, he has firsthand knowledge. But we've had many agents get their first listing. We get their first listing using this platform, because if you can say to someone, I've got something no one else has, give me a minute to tell you about it. Once they do, it makes total sense, because we start with the premise, why is there no transparency in real estate? Everything you do in your life right now, everything you and I do, we're buying a car, buying stocks, buying travel tickets, telemedicine, or taking an Uber. We're doing it online. We're getting the information quickly and efficiently, and we're able to make decisions, but not real estate. Consumers are left in the dark. It's a 100-year-old model. It's the model I grew up in. I made millions of dollars in that model. But the bottom line is that I always felt there was a better way. And, because you start with, when you're talking to a seller, you're the one thing, the next thing, when you can move the page, the next thing that you say after what, they say, okay, what do you have? Like when you're making that call and they say, I'll give you a minute. All you have to say to them is one thing. John, do you remember when you bought this home, you couldn't see any of the offers? And most sellers, will immediately bring up what happened when they were a buyer. And a lot of times they'll be frustrated. They'll say, why does it work that way? Why do we have to do it that way? And sometimes they'll say, hey, we missed out on one and we saw it settle while we were still in the market, and we would have paid more. It settled for $3,000 more than our offer. And that's why this platform was created. Because when buyers tend to, most human beings are risk averse. They're not going to just throw out a large number. If there's 20 people interested in a property, they're not all just going to throw out a crazy number. So at the end of the day, you get sometimes the most motivated buyer who's capable of paying well over list price for the property, qualified for 100,000 above list, but they're willing to go the distance if they knew what they were up against. But in the blind system, they're being told to submit an offer, and they're hedging against. I always used to hear, when I tell a buyer to throw, why don't you go to this price because, if they're saying there's 4 offers, and my gut is telling me you probably have to be here. But a lot of buyers would say, yeah, but what if I'm throwing away $20,000? What if I don't need to go that high? And, of course, you can't tell them. You can say, look, there's nothing we can do. We don't have the information, So a lot of times my buyers wouldn't throw out their best number. And then they'd come back, the agents, and ask for a best and final. And at that point, they'd shrug their shoulders. Typically, I'd get the shoulder shrug. Best and final, I'm not raising my offer. I made a guess. Tell them to tell me what I need to do. And so I would see the most motivated, capable buyer losing many times. I knew for a fact that although it was frustrating for the buyers, and this is something that we get across to the sellers, this is huge, because when you're talking to a seller, you're saying, right, John, it was frustrating when you were a buyer, right? But you found this home and you probably love it. Oh, yeah. And it's like a lot of times the buyer feels like this was the one I should have gotten. It's the best one. But so it's like the buyer didn't lose. The buyer's just frustrated with the process. The seller, on several of those that the buyer lost, was the loser. Because if that seller allowed the buyers to not have to guess and let them just go head to head and see and understand what they needed to do, those sellers would have gotten more money 90% of the time. And so, if buyers are guessing, a seller can really never know if they've left money or better terms on the table. That's why we created Homesale Plus. Homesale Plus is a dynamic online platform where the buyers and the buyer agents, listing agents, seller, everybody sees everything in real time. The buyer's agents can see in your listing, in the agent remarks, that all they need to do is submit here. You click on this link, cut and paste it in your browser, go to register, upload a pre-approval or a bank statement, and you're off to the races. It tells them the offer period is set. However, the seller can accept an offer at their discretion at any time. So, therefore they can put their buyer's best foot forward. And all they do once they register and they're approved is they just come and simply put in their price, their down payment, their days to close, inspection, yes or no, what type of financing or cash, and anything and everything else goes in a comment box. And when you click on that buyer number across that deal line, you'll see if there's any comments. They would need a seller subsidy for closing of 3%, or they want to offer the seller a free rent back or remove their appraisal contingency, do an as-is inspection for their purposes only. So good or bad, everyone is seeing everything in real time. The great thing is the buyers and the buyer agents, as well as you as a listing agent, are getting notifications every time someone places a new offer or they change anything about their existing offer. And what that does is when buyers see that, they see with their own eyes, it's powerful. That's where the magic starts. Because like we have buyer agents all the time telling us this. They're telling us they had a buyer that never would have gone the distance. One example, for instance, the agent told us she put her client's list price in and her terms, and the client said, that's it, not going any higher, let's see what happens. When she got the notifications that 2 other people came in higher, she called her agent and said, that's my home, I want it, they can't have it go higher, and she won. That agent said, my buyer benefited from it, but you know what? I want to learn how to list properties because that seller would have left money on the table. And that my buyer and every other buyer knew what the other offers were, and that seller knew for sure that they got the best price and terms. And we always say it's a win-win-win-win. We have a little animated video at our platform, and it's a win for the sellers, a win for the buyers, and a win for the agents. And it's a win for our industry because transparency brings nothing but trust. We use a pricing strategy to create a market for a property. Instead of doing and this is really key. A lot of agents have a problem with a seller, and they say, well, I'm going to put it on at your price, and we can always lower it, but we'll try it at this price. Because the seller says, I want $500,000, but let's put it on at $525,000 because I know everyone's going to try and negotiate. And they're going to be trying to get me and trying to do this. And they think it's a good strategy. It's a horrible strategy. The bottom line is that when you start high, you're going to go backwards, and there's no energy, no excitement. Property languishes. We use an opposite strategy. We use an artificially low price to make a market for the property. We want every eyeball popping and everyone in the market who's in the market, those other ones in the neighborhood recede into the shadows in their mind, and they make a beeline just for your listing. And it works. We get over 100 showings in 2 weeks on the average property that we have that when vacant. Naturally, showing schedules, a lot of times we would have over 100 on a lot of properties, but the sellers can't accommodate all of them, but it still works. This is just some examples of different counties, shapes, sizes. We've worked in wherever we've done listings. It works. It will create a market for the property. And when you do that, you will win. Here's an example of how we talk to a seller about price. If you were using an agent, if you and your neighbor or have the same properties, they were built same time, basically the same, all the same features. You both want around 500,000 and they're both worth around 500,000. Your neighbor's using an agent who's using the traditional method. They're going to price it a little high and end up going backwards if it doesn't move quickly. And your agent is using Home Sale Plus and listing it in the MLS at 395. They get 10 showings in 2 weeks. You get 100 showings in 2 weeks. Who's going to win? Sales is a numbers game. It's the law of sales. If I drop this pen, the law of gravity says it's going to drop every time, unless I'm in space, but I haven't experienced that. But if you drop a pen, it's going to drop, right? Anything. That's the law of gravity. Sales is the same way. It is absolutely strictly a numbers game. If you can get into 20 appointments a week, you have a better chance of getting listings than if you go into 2. If you get 100 people through a home after you list it, you have a much better chance of getting your seller a better outcome than if you get 10 people through. And the cherry on top when you're presenting to a seller is we're going to make a market for this property. We're going to make every eyeball pop. We're going to get everyone running to your home. And then once they do, they're going to run back and tell their agent, register, let's make an offer. And when they start seeing each other's offers, that's when the magic happens. And the cherry on top for you, when you say select an offer, I love that 500,000, go ahead and hit the button, let's select it. That is what you're getting. You're telling the seller, that is what you're getting without any compensation coming out of it. Sellers typically say the same things. They'll say, well, that sounds unbelievable, but how do you get paid? How does the buyer agent get paid? How does the platform get paid? It's simple. When the buyer agent and the buyer register, they learn the rules of the game before they click, okay, I've read it, I understand it, and we're good. And so when the buyer tells them to beat the 495 offer and go to 500, the buyer agent goes to the submission form. They put in 500,000 net to seller, and it'll show them what's going to be added. So they know in advance. The way this works, sellers do not care about anything but what they're getting. And so in this case, if we win, the buyer agent's telling their buyer, if we win with the commissions being added, my 2.5, which I'm allowed to in my agreement, and the 2.5 listing agent's getting and 1% for the platform, we're going to write the contract at 530,000. Are you okay with paying 530,000 for this property? If they are, they are. It's no different than any other transaction. It's just that for the first time, they can see some of the bundled fees that are making the price what the seller wants, So at the end of the day, very powerful. Sellers, when you frame it this way, they will say time and time again, well, that's fine. If the buyer's willing to add that, I'm fine with it. But in reality, you and I know as agents, the buyer has always been paying for everything in the transaction. It doesn't change anything. For a buyer, it's like, hey, if I'm okay with 530, and that's what I need to do, I'm okay with 530. That's the bottom line. So it works both ways to be a very elegant solution to the way that the commissions are added. And by the way, what we teach, and we don't tell anybody what to do with commissions, but the way that I do it as an agent, use the platform, I leave the buyer agent blank. And the reason why is because when I'm talking to a seller, I'm talking about what I'm getting, and I'm talking about the platform, whether I'm getting 4% or 1, and the platform's getting 1, or I'm taking 3, or whatever it is. And I say we're going to leave the buyer agent comp open. The reason why is all buyers have to have an agreement with their buyer. All buyer agents have to have an agreement with their buyer now. They are going to dictate what they're allowed to get. let them put in whatever their commission is. It only changes the price their buyer pays. It does not affect the net when you look at this and you accept an offer. And by the way, you are not obligated to accept any offer while it's on this platform.
Yes. And vice versa for an agent who's coming in, they can also just plug in the total contract price that their buyer's willing to pay, and it's automatically going to calculate and show what the seller's going to receive before the commissions. And so everything calculates instantaneously, and they're just putting in one or the other. The buyers are seeing, like Jerry said, the commission fees that are typically baked into a contract price, and they don't really see the full breakdown until settlement. Here, they're seeing it all up front. So there's no ambiguity, no questions, things like that. It's all very clear. And the commissions are still coming off of the seller side of the sheet out of this contract price. But like Jerry said, it's very powerful for the seller. 2 weeks or less, no obligation to accept an offer whatsoever. And when I do, the commissions are added to this price I accept. That sounds great. What do I have to lose? What do I have to risk? Great. I'll send you the dot loop. So it's very powerful when talking to a seller in that sense. It doesn't end up any differently for the buyer.
Yeah, and two things that are great when you're using this. There's two questions that you now can answer to a buyer agent, and you don't have to go through any games with them. Oh, what's your seller looking for? What do they want? Hey, seller's using this method to see what the market will bear. Like, go put your client's offer in. You can start at the opening price and you can change it any time on the fly. However, you can also put your best foot forward, and if you want to put out the number that you were willing to go to, you can just put it in and see if the seller will stop it. And we have had sellers stop them immediately, in the first day. Now, that's one of the questions that I love, because that's always the conversation with the agents. Well, what's your seller looking for? If we were to do this, what do you think? No more of that. And the big one, what Zach was talking about, if a buyer agent calls you, and they're all going to call you and say, hey, is there compensation being paid? You don't have to say it's negotiable or this, or we're offering this and you can take this much of a concession. It's beautiful, because for them, you're going to say, look, you're going to love this. When you go to the platform, whatever your buyer agency agreement is, you can put it in. You can put it in. It doesn't affect what when the seller accepts an offer. It only affects what the contract price your buyer pays. So it's really, really efficient and really powerful. Here's there's a few case studies I'll run through quickly. So this is a great example. Seller had heard about our platform, had a referral on it, and loved everything about it, and was ready to roll. And we're getting down to it, and says, hey, so what's our starting price? I know that you guys use an artificially low price, but what's it going to be? And I said, what was the number you were looking to net again? He said, 420. I said, 295. Eyeballs popped open. Jerry, 295. How will people know it's not like in the 300s? How would they know the value? Said, look, Terry, the bottom line is that, the buyers are looking on their favorite online site. They're seeing what properties go for in your neighborhood, and the buyer agent should be running comps. But even if they aren't, all that matters is that what you just did when your eyes popped wide open, that's what we need everyone to do. Because if they do that, and they go run into your property, and you get 50 to 150 showings in 2 weeks, and you get 5, 10, 15 people making offers, you're going to win. The market's going to take it where it's naturally going to go. And he said, hey, I'm a little nervous at that price, but I got to tell you, I trust you 100%. Let's do it. And we ran a 2-week deadline in the MLS, 2 weeks offer period. However, told everyone, seller can accept an offer anytime. In this case, after 1 week and 89 showings and 9 offers, the seller accepted 463 net, 43,000 higher than his target price. In this case, I felt like this 490 range, these 2 offers with commissions added, could be in non-appraisal land. So I put in, on the seller side, you can put comments in just like the buyer side. We typically, our best practices show it's better just to stand back, but in this instance, it made sense. Usually it's good just to let the buyers compete against each other and you're just standing back watching. In this case, I asked this buyer number, 201-1885, will you remove your appraisal contingency? They quickly answered yes, and we accepted their offer. And so they ended up actually putting 200,000 down at the table, and the bank probably waived the appraisal anyway. But this is a great example of how this works. This is one that we work with this company in Richmond, Virginia a lot. They love our platform, and this was an interesting one because the seller had an appraisal for 1.3 million. The agent had experience using our platform. He wanted to list it at 995,000. He had asked me what I thought, and I thought that will do it. That's a great starting price. That will probably push everyone in the market to that property who's in the market for a property like that. And his seller was having none of it. He wanted a net 300, 1.3 million, and he didn't want to go under that 1.3 million starting price. So he listed it at 1,295. Now he sold it. There was demand for this property, and they got 35 showings, and they ended up with 2 people bidding it out, and he got 57,000 higher than his target price. However, net target price. However, the agent called me afterwards and said, I mean, obviously it was successful. Everyone was happy, but if his seller let him put it on at 995, he probably would have ended up with 100 showings, and and then 3 or 4 or 5 people making offers, probably would have gotten more money. But that's an example of
and on the other side of that, we just had one that the seller did go to 995 looking for, I think, was it 1.5 million?
Oh, they wanted 1.6.
And that was a price that had never happened in the neighborhood, in the area. We weren't sure if that was possible, but when you let the market compete and people see with their own eyes, you never know where it's going to go. And that started at 995, under contract for the highest price ever in their neighborhood for 1.6 million. Everyone was happy. So you can never underprice a home.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, I told them, because it wasn't the best school district in the area, and it was a new construction they bought in 22, and there was a comp from 3-4 months before. They called me for 1.5 million. They had a little over 1.5 in the property with some custom features. And I didn't honestly think they'd get it, but I told them we have to be very aggressive because in this price point, in this area, and we put it on for 3 weeks instead of 2. We drove 74 buyers through that property. And in the end, they got 3,000 short of 1.6. They got 1,597,000. Once again, a record in the neighborhood. We've done a few of those. So here's a good example. This is a great example of when you have this in your toolkit, why you would use Flexbid instead of an auction. This is one where the top agent, big team in the area, went into this listing. He told me, and the seller said, "Hey, look, we were referred to you by our friends. We wanted to hear you out, but we're kind of predisposed to using Cooper Auctions, which is a local auction company in the Mid-Atlantic, a big auction company." And he said, "Look, I can do an auction. I can do an auction too, with this platform I'm going to tell you about. However, auction, the net's going to be this wide. This property can be financed, definitely conventional, if not FHA. And so let's let them all compete and let the finance contingencies, the ones that want contingencies for finance, push the cash buyers up, and let's see where it ends. You'll pick the best offer." Ends up, he looked like a superstar, of course, because they said, "Okay, sounds good. Never heard of that option." They put it on very aggressively at 200,000. They went the whole 14 days, 111 showings, 9 offers, $382,000 net to seller, 32,000 higher than the target price. And if you look, the 4th highest buyer offer was 350,000 from a cash buyer. That buyer never went higher, but those 2 conventionals did, and that 380 conventional pushed up the other cash buyer to 382. If they had done an auction, they would have probably ended up at 351, 355 somewhere, because that 350 never raised their offer. So they would have left close to $30,000 on the table. So naturally, in the end, I'm sure he got a lot of referrals out of this. We provide custom marketing materials for you guys. We have a PowerPoint presentation like this, but it's for sellers. And that's one of the things we'll go through in our training sessions, which we'll tell you about in a minute. Those are very powerful. We have agents that cold call, get a FSBO or expired to a Zoom, go through it, and like Zach said, they'll be sending out the dot loop or DocuSign before they ever even meet them, because it's a powerful presentation. We have door knockers. These are great. If you go door knocking, these are great. This agent likes the door knock. So we created these, and we now create them for agents all the time. We put this QR code on it. And what it does, we created case studies like the ones I showed you, but for her properties in neighborhoods where she's going to prospect. So she goes, excuse me, she's standing at the door. She tells them, click on the QR code. They see all this stuff like, what? That property did what? And they see it, and they're like, whoa, I've never seen this. And it gives her a huge leg up in exciting that prospect and getting them to take an appointment with her and talk to them about their house. We have flyers, we have one pagers. We really want to provide these things. We provide these at no cost to you. If you use them, we will provide them. The door knockers, we have a QR code that we give you. You can then upload your photo, your information. We build them. We'll put a QR code on that goes to other listings in your office that have been on the platform. If you haven't done one yet, and or if it's new to the office, we can put other examples. And it's very powerful. We print those, we ship them to you, and we do that because we want to make you successful. We also provide professional photography. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you all the benefits on the next page. There's so many things this platform can do for you. And the one thing that it does that's not on here is, even if you don't sell the property, instead of going backwards and sitting and getting very little data for your seller and the seller getting frustrated, even when it doesn't sell on our platform, you get data. Because if you price a property down and the seller thinks it's worth 500 and you think it's worth, maybe somewhere near there, and you put it on for 395 and the market doesn't go running, you got a real demand problem. But a lot of times what it does is it shows the seller their expectations might be off, because the market doesn't lie when you get 50 or 100 people through and you get 5-10 people making offers. And where it stops, that seller's like, I see you made a market for this property. But so what this is going to do for you, though, is separate you from the competition. It's going to help you get more listings. It's going to help you sell more of your stale listings. I can tell you a couple right off the bat. Had an agent had a $460,000 listing sitting for 2 months at $460. 2 months. Put it on our platform in 2 weeks at $325. Ended up with a $458 contract price at the end. What they couldn't even get people through the door, and they achieved what the seller was trying to do in 2 weeks after that. We have so many great stories from agents like that. But besides helping you get more listings and sell more of your stale listings, like Phil was talking about, buyer leads. If you do open houses, the kind of traffic you get with this type of strategy, you will get buyer leads. We just talked to a buyer, a listing agent the other day who uses our platform. She said that she got 5 leads and already has 3 of them signed up to buyer agreements because of the amount of traffic she got at the first open house she did. We provide professional photography for you. If you have a new listing, we're gonna pay for the photography. If you have an existing listing and you don't have good photography, we're gonna tell you, let's get new photos. And if it doesn't sell on our platform in 2 weeks or less, you have no obligation. You don't owe us for those photos. They're yours. If you reposition the listing, now you've got that data that came from using it for the 2 weeks and the photography. We don't charge you anything. We provide free customized marketing materials, and everything is no cost to you. There is absolutely no subscription fee, administrative fees, startup fees, nothing. If the buyer wants your client's property and they're willing to add to what the seller says they're willing to accept without any commission in it, if they're adding it, the buyer's adding it, we get paid, just like you get paid. If we're not involved, you don't owe us anything. So a lot of great benefits. And
just to touch on that, sorry.
Yeah.
Just to touch on that, having no cost or no subscription fee, we only get paid if the property sells. Just have this in your toolkit. Like the last case study that we showed, it's not going to be for everyone, but it can be for anyone. And when you offer multiple options to a seller, you're instantly going to have more value. When you say to a seller, hey, I've got a few different ways we can sell your house, and few of these options you've probably never seen before, heard from another agent, you're going to have more value. And so offering those different things to a seller, having multiple different ways of doing things is going to help your business. And having it in your toolkit may be the difference maker of you getting that listing or giving your seller another option before that listing expires or they move on to try to do something differently and get that seller to the finish line. One last thing I'd like to add as well, because I mostly went after for sale by owners and expired leads because they are, you know, it's great when you have something different to talk to them. But, you know, when you look at the grand scheme of things, as far as probate cases and divorce cases, working with attorneys, you know, having transparency taken to a court or judge anything is so powerful and beneficial. And you can just use this outside of the box to really grow your business and have strategic ways of becoming, you know, a strategic realtor and doing different things outside of the box.
Yeah, good point. Real quick, we have some agents that work with cash buyers, and those cash buyers have leads that they just don't monetize. And so they get the lead from them. And this is the type of thing where that seller who's like, their house is too nice for a cash buy. But this is like super exciting for that type of seller because they want something easy. They want it fast. They want transparency. They, you know, and it's like to get that listing with that lead, everyone knows agents. You're going in with the same method. You're in the red water. You're fighting it out with thousands of people. When you go in with this, you can kill it because they love the 2 weeks. Don't have to accept anything. We're going to create the market. We're going to drive it. You're going to love it. And then when you pick an offer, after the people compete at the highest level, there's zero compensation coming out of that price you accept. That in 20 seconds, they are just like, I love it. We have a couple of agents, and one in particular who's just killing it. She works with a company that does cash buys, and she lists properties all the time. And she is a newer agent. She literally, as she got her start using our platform and doing that with her company. And it's crazy. Also, like Zach was talking about with attorneys, if you go do like a local bar association, you set up there, you get a little setup and you present, or you know, you go out and you solicit lawyers, you know, attorneys, you network with people that have attorneys. Attorneys love this because it's total transparency for any type of real estate. If it's an as is and they just want to get it off their plate, we had a lawyer locally here who did a whole bunch of stuff with our platform. He had one, he was like 10,000. He auctioned it, said anything above 10,000, just put it out there. So we went absolute above 10,000. He got $111,000. He was shocked. I mean, we just had no idea. He couldn't even get into the house. It was like hoarders, someone in it, and they weren't supposed to be in it. And they had a whole bunch of animals in it. And somehow someone was willing to do that. So lawyers, it's great. Divorce stuff, because they need to show that transparency is important. If you've ever done probate, like you'll have the family members calling you if they're a listing agent. Hey, what did my sister do? When did she accept? What did she accept? And you're saying, hey, I can't talk to you. You're not the PR. And they go to court. They hold the proceeds up from the estate. And like this just is like totally, everyone can see everything. They can show a judge, the attorney. Everything was absolutely done transparently. So if you get creative, you can really, really use this platform in many ways. And we'll have some of the people I'm talking about in the future that we can show you their like what they did, and they can talk about how they've used the platform in really creative ways. So the follow up to this is, and we'll get questions in a minute. We're going to have a couple training sessions, and we're going to have the link dropped into the chat. So, and you guys will have it on your company website. And the training sessions will be 6 p.m. on May 12th and 11 a.m. on May 13th. And in the training, we will go through the seller presentation with you. We will give you some dialogues for cold calling, and we will show you all of the best practices to really use this to get started, to get your listings on, and to use this with the best way possible to get the best outcome. So if we now can open it up for questions.
Yeah,
Phillip, do
thank you, Jerry and Zach. So let me read some of the questions, and if I can answer them, I will. And if if I need some assistance, you guys can jump in. So Tommy, we answered his question. Alexandra seemed to like it. Is this a great finally, transparency that is very comfortable for everyone. Hey, hi, how are you? Thank you for being here. I don't believe the 1%, platform fee is negotiable, but we appreciate you being a good realtor and you're always negotiating. So awesome, man. That's a good one. But I don't believe that is. Hey, Mike, who sees the compensation amounts? Everybody, right? I mean, it's all there. It's all transparent. Everybody sees it. Hey, Janet, how you doing? What about finance deals? Yeah, I mean, that's, I think when it's an auction, that format, which I probably, and again, Jerry and Zach can correct me, but I'm sure there aren't quite as many auctions as there are, kind of the bidding process. And again, those are for properties, the auction where there is no financing, but any house that's, conventional approved, FHA, VA approved, absolutely. So finance deals, perfectly fine. Hey, Sylvia, yep, most lenders will still need an appraisal, even if, the client's putting 50% down. Marty's asking about the Texas, or Maria, Texas Real Estate Commission and the DBPR. I mean, I believe both are fine with this because again, it's transparent. It benefits everybody, right? So there would be really no reason for them not to be, but if Jerry and Zach want to comment on that, maybe you can
Yeah,
mention that as well.
yeah. If and we've done deals in Dallas, but like so. What some agents have asked about is, well, wait a second, we can't talk about compensation, but it's in there. It's in the place where the buyer agent is placing their offer. So it's just like if they submit a contract and they're asking for two and like it has to be somewhere, right? So it's totally compliant. We checked on that before we ever, got started with that. But totally compliant. It's only if they register and they're in there, that's where you make an offer. So it's fine. As far as transparency, obviously, as Phil said, it really just is, it brings total trust to everybody. And it's not, I mean, we've never had any state that we've worked in that had a problem with it. Um, so
Perfect. So Hi is asking about the appraisal contingency. Let me just shut that phone off. Hold on. So Jerry and Zach, do you have a place where someone would put in an appraisal contingency? Is there a field for that?
it's just if they have a finance contingency, we're assuming they have an appraisal contingency unless the thing that happens is they'll put in, I'll do an appraisal gap or like for 20,000. We've had that happen. And then the next person goes 10,000 higher and goes, I'll do an appraisal gap for 30,000. And they all start doing it. But appraisals will remove our appraisal. And sometimes as a listing agent, you can make a comment. You can say, will you remove your appraisal contingency? Like I did in that one I was showing you. But yeah, I mean, if they have a finance contingency, unless they put in the remarks that they will waive their appraisal, we're taking it that it has an appraisal. I mean, that's it.
Well, in
Unless,
Florida, there's actually a separate carve out for appraisal contingencies. And then obviously you have the FHA VA kind of piece, where if it doesn't appraise, they can essentially, back out. That's countrywide. So,
sure.
again, I think where High mentions about the appraisal contingency being a killer, show the appraiser this. I mean, right? That's where the market is now, right? I mean, so hopefully, I mean, we always have to worry about, a property appraising. So it's probably no different here. So Marty, I think we answered your question. How are you? Thanks for being here. Again, I think and I believe there's some verbiage. As long as the seller tells you, and Jerry and Zach, you can comment on this, as long as the seller tells you it's okay to share the offer price with others, then it's fine, right? It's, they've instructed you to do that. And I'm sure that's, because again, that's kind of what this is. So I wouldn't really see that, as an issue. How do you manage so many showings if the property is occupied? Well, a couple things there. I mean, obviously, you're going to schedule those, um, you know, showings. Hopefully your client's going to be accommodating that way. Another thing that I think is important is to do 2 open houses or maybe 4 open houses, like Saturday and Sunday. I mean, again, you'll bring in a lot of people. I think managing the open house, might be difficult, because I think when you start to get, for me, it was once, like, say I'm doing a 2-hour open house, like, to me, the magic number was about 8 or 9 people that came, right? Because then I can spend a little bit of time with them. I can get to know them, right? And then again, only one person's going to be able to buy the house, and I might end up like getting a couple buyers out of it. I think that's kind of the side benefit of all this. But if it's like really hot and your phone is ringing off the hook and you got a feeling, hey, there's going to be 20, 25 people at this open house, get another Dalton Wade agent and have 2 of you there, right? So you can kind of both benefit.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Good idea.
And now,
yeah, Jan's asking, how can there be no inspection? There can be no inspection because, again, the buyer is waiving their inspection. They don't need a home inspection to typically get insurance unless the house is 30, and this is in Florida, unless the house is older than, I believe, 30 years, and they need that 4-point inspection, right? So then they're going to at least have to get that, but they don't have to do a home inspection. Back in the, pandemic, when houses were selling, in a weekend, many, we used to laugh, like, buyers are giving up their rights, right? They're giving up their rights. They're not even doing a home inspection because if they do, they're not going to get the property. So I think, it's not, again, the buyer's agent not doing their job. I mean, we always want to do a home inspection, right? I mean, it's always beneficial. We should always recommend to our client to do one. But hey, if they really want that property and they're willing to say, hey, I'm willing to waive that, maybe, it's a couple years old, whatever, obviously our clients are always in charge.
That's right. And yeah, I mean, as far as showings go, you were touching on that. We've had many properties that, had people in them. Sometimes it's a situation where, there's a couple, they're elderly and they're not going to be leaving the property lot. You're going to work around and bottom line is they might have had 150 showings and they had 70 over 2 weeks. Sometimes there's situations where we had one where it was a divorce and the agent only had access because the husband was still living in the property and the wife was gone and she was like wanting to sell that house, and he would only let Sundays be the day. And I think the agent got 40 people through and he had it sitting for months and months, and he used our strategy, and the second day active was Sunday, and 40 people, and he ended up selling that property after he had it for a long time and couldn't sell it. So, where there's a will, there's a way. I always say to a seller, this is the bottom line. If they say, well, I work out of the house and I can't do this and I can't do that, I'm going to say, so you're not looking for the most money. And they have to understand. They say, no, I want the most money. It's like, but you can't get that without letting people compete. And they're not going to compete unless you let them in the house to see it to begin with. So the bottom line is it's up to them. And this is not for everyone. If there's a situation where someone has a home and they want like total privacy and they want you to really do it off market, like that type of celebrity, or or the people just don't want to accommodate showings, or there's somebody's sick. I mean, it is what it is. You're not going to get the best. They have to understand, I can do this, but you're not going to get the best outcome.
One of the places I used to have difficulty with tenants, right? There's a tenant in that house,
Sure.
and they don't want to have all those showings. And in fact, they don't even want the property to be sold. So what I used to do there would be like what I called a group showing, right? So I'd have like 3 or 4, I would kind of communicate with the tenant, say, hey, we're going to have 4 showings, right? And then you would let everybody know. You can it's kind of like a different way of saying it's an open house, but I would call it kind of like a group showing, right? And then, it makes it less onerous on the tenant, and you're still able to get the people in. So Hi is asking, yeah, so you would basically take that top offer. You know, whatever offer, you know, your client ends up deciding, it's not always the highest price. Maybe there's an offer a few $1,000s less, but it's cash or conventional, and they'd rather, you know, go that way than, you know, FHA or VA, who knows, but whatever they decide, yeah, then you go to contract. You know, if in your state, you go to the standard contract, you tell the buyer's agent, write it up and send it over, and then you go from there. Hey, Rosie, how are you? Good to see you. If the property is already on, you know, the MLS, and how are we using? Yeah, you're basically, so that house is at $499 and you're getting nobody through. You're gonna, you know, talk to your client, tell them, hey, this is a different strategy. You don't have to accept any offers, but it's a way to drive traffic in, and we're gonna find out where the market is now. And then you're gonna do, you know, you're gonna do an MLS modification. You're going to lower that price. There's an addendum they're going to sign, and you're going to lower the price to $325 or $299. Whatever you gotta. I mean, I always found when I kind of did this, you know, and sort of, I mean, it wasn't online, but manually, about 70 to 75% was kind of the number that brought them in, right? And that's what you're trying to do. I mean, again, let me give you the bad. I mean, I did one once and I listed it at 405 and the top offer went up to 465. And the client looks at me and says, oh, my house is worth 500,000 all day long. Took her 4 years to sell her house. It's not worth that. She thinks that's what it's worth, but they're not realistic. They're not sellers, right? I mean, we all get listings that people, you know, they're listers, they're not sellers. So, but if somebody truly wants to sell, if somebody truly, and again, you gotta do, you know, you're gonna do marketing, you're gonna do social media, you're gonna do open houses, you're gonna have a whole strategy. It's like a blitz, and you're gonna put that blitz forth, and you're gonna bring a lot of people in, and they're gonna tell you what that house is worth. And the best situation is if you get, out of those 100 people that come, you need 2 or 3 that want it, and they'll bid against each other. And that's what drives up the price. Now, if you don't get those 2 or 3, right, you only get 1, and, you know, the offer doesn't go that high, then, you know, hey, you tried, and then you go back to the old price and you go from there.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's worth trying high. There's no real downside to it. I mean, you know, and again, I think not only do you have the possibility of getting, you know, the listing sold, but, you know, have one of your teammates, you know, have another agent, you know, it's a good way to generate leads. Hey, Chislin, how you doing? Thank you for being here. No, you can do this on condos, townhouses, fourplex. I mean, anything that's kind of residential. Absolutely. So it works for anything. You know, again, obviously single family homes are most in demand, so you probably won't get quite as many, but you know, I mean, you're not restricted whatsoever on that. Hey, Nicole, how are you? What do you mean by any other dates? We're doing this again tomorrow at 11 a.m. So if you kind of missed some of this, certainly jump on. Hey, Josh, good to see you. When can we start? Absolutely. I mean, right away, pretty much. We're ready to go. Let's see. Yeah, you know, next.
And just to touch on
tomorrow,
one thing,
11 a.m. Eastern time. I mean, we'll be doing them. I mean, you can go online, Nicole, you can call me, and I'll kind of explain everything to you and kind of take you through everything.
and just to touch on one thing, Phil, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I posted, there's 2 training sessions that we have coming up, one on May 12th and one on May 13th. So I posted those links in the chat. So that may be what some of them are referring to. And if for some reason you can't make one of those training sessions, so tomorrow we're going to be doing the presentation again. If you can't make one of the training sessions, which are more in depth, you can let us know and we can schedule, you know, a one-on-one or something that suits your schedule, and we can accommodate.
As we can accommodate, but
as we can, yes.
One-on-ones, we wouldn't be able to.
But we encourage everyone to try to join the Zoom sessions that we have listed.
As much as possible. What we'd like to do and we can get started right away, and everyone can have an email sent to them that was on the webinar tonight with a getting started email that should, gives you the language for the addendums, gets you the next steps and how to do it. We prefer that you go to the training first before you start. Just because we want you to be, and actually, if you have like a property and your seller is like, we have agents that literally the same day we do the seminar, they're like, I need to do this now. We can get started with the process, but we want you still to get on a training before, sometime very soon, because we just want to make sure there's some things that we've seen and we've learned in the last 4.5 years, and we can make sure, we want to make sure that you're successful. There's some little things about what to say here, what not to say, what to do that are just going to make a difference when you're in the position and you're asked a question, or, we've had agents who say, hey, this is the opening price, but my seller wants. Well, once you do that, you're done. If you're going to tell them what it is and say, well, he's not going to accept less than this, there was no point to put it on like this, because the whole idea is the psychology is powerful. People will pay more than you ever imagined in the end, even when you had it listed at that price and you couldn't get it. If you let them just come in and say, hey, they let them think they're going to steal it. That's great. Let them think. And then the people then there's the middle tier that are like, hey, I'm willing to go here. And then there's the people that are pushed up from there and are like, I'm willing to go the distance. I want this home. Like Phil was saying, the 2 or 3, you get them in competition, it's all over. So just some very basic things that we want to, in our training that we get for you to get the certification. And it's valuable. So once again, you'll get the information to get started quickly, but we really, really think it's great if you can get into the training before you list the property.
So buyer, hey, Sylvia. Sylvia's asking about buyer paid closing costs. That's a great question. So where does that go? Is that like netted, like, they would gross up the offer and then ask for like a concession? How does that work?
Yeah, right now the concessions would be anything and everything besides the 5 categories. They have to put in a comment box. So they would say, my buyer wants a $10,000 concession for closing, and you would see that in the deal. So let's say this 615. You click on it and you get all the comments that are down here with that deal, if they have any, and you see my buyer wants $10,000 closing help. And then this offer for 610, they're not asking for any. So guess what? This offers a better offer by 5,000, right? Now, if let's just say this was about to end and you want to know if they'll remove that or if they'll bump up the price, you could put a comment and say, look, we'll bump the price. You'll bump the price up by 10,000, to get that back. We're okay with that. But we're not going to, otherwise we're not going to, that offer is not going to be accepted. So right now it's basically everything and anything goes in the comments. And unless they say we would like, see if they're going to, it ends up whatever their gross price is. If you go back to this page, Zach, go to the submission form.
Perfect. So, hey, Kelly, how are you? I think we kind of answered that. I mean, it's probably best to wait to the 12th, but if you're really anxious, we could probably get you going sooner. Kim is asking, will there be a replay? Absolutely. We'll have that, probably up on the training section, in Dalton Wade, come, midday tomorrow. Hey, Dave, do you have the ability to include any estimated closing costs to help determine the true net? I think there you'd want to work with Turner Title. I'll put a plug in for them, at least if you're in Florida. If you're in another state, kind of with your local, your local title company. So here it shows, all the commissions, but it doesn't show, any type of, tax stamps, anything like that you would need to get from, from title and then pass that along to your, to your client. Hey, Ken, I'm glad you're able to make it. What is the % of sales versus properties not sold? Great question. Why don't you guys answer that?
Yeah, it's because we get a lot of properties from agents using it the first time that are things that they've had sitting that are hard to sell. you know, our percentage is about 50%. But if, you know, in times when, you know, when we started the platform and it was our listings going in and they were all our best new listings, you know, we were selling a super high level. So it's all based on, obviously, you know, the platform is not magic. What I do say is that, you know, we have so many examples every month of agents that had something sitting for months and they end up getting as much or more than that price they had it sitting at, contract price. And so it works. And even when it doesn't sell on our platform, it does something great for you, because the bottom line is, if you have a seller that's stuck on my property's worth 500 and you put it on for 350, 375, 395, and they see that you drove traffic and they see that people made offers and it goes to 450, that's what it's worth today. And it gives you a snapshot. So, like, let's say you relist it because this seller is not ready to take an offer in that range. And now 2 months later, you get a couple offers in that range and they realize and they accept an offer because that date you gave them data that at least at some point they could correlate. You're going to get the ones like Phil had that will be selling their home for years and years because they're just not going to be in tune with the market and they don't care. But we always say that it's valuable for you even when it doesn't sell. We don't get paid. We don't get our money for photography reimbursed. We don't ask you for money because any type of fees, but for you, it has value.
Yeah, and just to add in on that, I've had a seller word for word. It was actually a for sale by owner that I picked up. It fell about $25,000 short, and she saw with her own eyes the showings we had, the offers we had, and she said, I didn't have to say anything. Zach, I think my expectations were off a little bit. And so it's a great way to reset expectations for clients if it doesn't sell.
I mean, you know, again, I mean, it's the market, and you know, it's not like we're in a rising market. We are in a flat to declining market. So, you know, I mean, time is their enemy in a lot of cases. So, you know, but we will definitely get you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Ken can do that. Ken is asking, do you pay for the photographer or reimburse us for using our photographer? So we list in our local MLS and the homesale.plus platform, correct?
Yes, you in the remarks, we'll give you agent remarks for, you know, to place in your agent remarks that tell the agents, you know, all offers will be accepted on the platform. Here's the offer period. You don't need to write a contract unless you're the winner. Seller can accept an offer at their discretion at any time. Here's a cut and paste link to register, our customer service number if they have any questions about the platform itself. And it's very turnkey and very simple.
So is training the 512 and 530, they're the same training. So there's one additional kind of more in-depth training. How do we know they are pre-approved for financing or proof of funds? I believe they submit that on the platform, correct?
Yeah, they must submit a pre-approval if they're financing or a bank statement if they're going to pay cash. And a lot of times our internal people here administrative people will do the approvals because agents want us to, but we're not calling the lenders. We're just looking at the letters and if they're, you know, as long as they're legitimate and, you know, they'll get approved. A lot of times they will not. We tell the buyer agents, always submit your best letter up front. You know, you can submit a letter for $1 million, and some agents do, even though it's a $700,000 property and they're not going to go that high because their buyers qualified for $1 million. Because that way you don't have to keep resending the letters. But a lot of them do. They keep, as they go higher, they resend new letters. We make sure that they do. Some agents, and we recommend this, but we do it because we realize agents like us to do a lot of things. You know, if an agent wants to start calling and talking to the lender, that's great. You know, or you want to call them before you accept an offer, that's fine. And we would recommend that, you know. But yes, they do have to submit. They have to have a letter high enough for the offer that they put in. And the offer, of course, the opening offer it has to be high enough with the commissions added, not just the net price that the seller sees. So that's covered.
Does the lower starting price scare some buyers away? I think absolutely just the opposite. It brings in, you know, more buyers. And obviously sometimes you're going to get buyers, say that house is $499 and you're listing it for $405. I mean, you're going to find some people that come and that's all they can pay. But those are not really the people you're looking for. I mean, maybe you're looking for them maybe to pick up as a buyer, but they're not going to be able to bid it up. You know, it's that competition that ultimately, you know, kind of gets the price to where, you know, it could work for the seller. Does it work for condos? Absolutely. Buyers known areas for, so they search. That is that any, what do you guys say on, you know, Jerry and Zach on buyers known areas, 400K neighborhood. So they search price 325 to 425. If you list at 295, it will not show up in the buyer search.
Yeah, if somebody pulls and doesn't just pull anything, you know, up to an amount, they could segment it out, but we certainly don't have that problem. It doesn't, if we do, it's certain, you know, then there would have been another 50 people that would have come. But so that typically, and yeah, I mean, you could pull like that. But we've never seen that as being a problem, you know.
Especially, I would say there's a lot of other, you know, more criteria than just the price. You know, if they're looking for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house and it's listed at 295 and they find that, you know, they're going to find that property.
Yep. So Bill's asking, yep, we still use the regular contract. Can we set a reserve? You can set a reserve if it's the auction format. In the bidding format, there is no reserve. It's, you know, the seller either accepts the offer or they don't. Hey, Henry, yep, this is going to be recorded. I mean, obviously this is live, but there will be a recorded training. I mean, this will all be, it is being recorded and it will be posted. Yeah, I don't think the software, and you guys can comment, you know, because every, you know, every state is different, every property is different. So again, work with your title company, you know, to come up with, I mean, you should have already done that, you know, in terms of giving them, you know, what their net, you know, net to seller net sheet is. When we sign up to test the show, I have 3 new listings. Yeah, absolutely. Nicole, we'll get you taken care of. Don't worry. Call me tomorrow. I'll help you. You show an MLS is going to be Flexbid sale after reducing. I mean, did they mention like the bidding? Like how's that promoted in the MLS or public remarks, realtor remarks?
So
Yeah, good.
the Flexbid is a standard sale. And so when it goes in the MLS, it goes in as a standard sale. Of course, in the remarks, it shows list price represents opening offer amount, and it gives them details of how they can get more information, call us directly. It's very clear they are in the remarks, but it is a standard sale.
Ken, it is a different link for tomorrow. I'll send you that. I think we've talked about the closing costs. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to kind of go with, do you put a time limit on submitting offers? You know, maybe 10 to 14 days. I mean, these guys are more expert. I think they like, you know, 14 days. I mean, what I would do, I'd list it on Monday. I do open houses, you know, that first Saturday and Sunday, and then the next Saturday and Sunday, and the bidding kind of ends, you know, Sunday night. Thank you, Marty. Appreciate you being there. Check out the trainings next week. Hey, Elliot, how are you? Good to see you. Appreciate you being here. Let's see. Hey, Mike, they're the same presentation. Janet, you're awesome. You're all over it. She's anxious to take the trainings. We love it. Melissa, have a nice evening. Thank you so much for being here. Hasn't there been an issue to get lenders to include the buyer's compensation? Will that be an issue?
No, not at all. Because the lender is getting a contract that says what it just says, here's the commission breakout. there's an addendum that we give you language to conclude with the contract, or we typically send that addendum for commission structure to the buyer agent once you accept an offer and we know what, it's the offer on the platform, so we know what the commission structure is. Because we do that because if remember the commissions are added to it. So if you took a contract to your title company at 530 and you said the 2.5, and 1, it would not come to 500. It would come to less than 5 because you'd be taking it out of the 530. We add it to it. So that's the only thing. But the lenders don't care. It doesn't have any bearing on them. The contract price is the contract price. Their buyer's not paying the commission. It's still coming off the seller side of the sheet. Your seller's going to sign an addendum that says seller will pay 0 commission from the accepted offer price, which is the net to seller. That's what they're looking at. Buyer will add, and it's the seller allowing them to add whatever the commissions they're allowing to add. And then, the commission will be added by the buyer and will come off the seller side of the sheet out of the contract price at closing, because it's no different for the buyer. They're not paying the hard closing cost. It's just baked in like it always is. It's just that the buyer's always been paying for everything. And a lot of the way real estate's been done, it's been like, 10 years ago, it was like 20 years ago, it was like, it's free to use me as a buyer agent. It's never been free. Now you just can't say that because the buyer has to know and they've always been paying for everything the seller negotiates because the seller's thinking about it when they're negotiating. So contract price is exactly the same. It's a standard sale. The bank's FHA, VA, conventional, doesn't matter. Just comes in as a standard contract.
Can we use our local title company? Absolutely, but we would love if you used her title if you're in Florida, for sure. It definitely helps us out. Which is better, auction or bid? I mean, at least my take and my understanding is, so if you've got a non-financeable property, the auction format is better. If it can go conventional, FHA, VA, you want to do the bidding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, James. Appreciate you being here. Seller lists the price lower than what they want, and you go through the process, you get offers, but none are above the list price. For the seller, be committed to accepting one of those lower offers. Nope, absolutely not. I mean, the seller's never they're never required to accept any offer. I mean, I think that's a misconception. Like if it's on the MLS for this price, they have to accept it. No, they don't. They don't. They never have, and they never will have to do that. Yep. Hey, Donna, how are you? I'll get you that. I'll get you that link. Look for that. To clarify, tomorrow's Zoom session is the same as tonight. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm licensed in Florida, Georgia, but not in Tennessee. However, I own a property in Tennessee that I listed through a local non-DW agent. Are there any listing options on this site, or do I have to wait until the listing expires? No, I mean, you could do it through your regular agent. I mean, there's no holdback there, provided your agent takes the training, they understand it, you want to check it out. Absolutely not an issue. Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Hi, Kiana, good to see you. Thank you. You're registered already. She's awesome. What are the guarantees that a person who won a bid will see the deal through? Well, I would think it's kind of the same as, whenever you accept a contract, right? I mean, because of the title company, I got pretty good data on that. 25% fall out of contract. So there's going to be no difference. They might do an inspection and might want to renegotiate. That's possible. They may not get approved. And so, it would be very similar to any transaction. Nothing different here because, they went through this, this process. Hey, Joe, thank you. Let's see. Yeah, people not represented by a realtor can bid. Absolutely. But you would need to get the buyer broker agreement from them because you're representing them, right? I mean, you're going to be a transaction broker on both sides. So you're going to get the buyer broker agreement, right? And, that's how you're going to do that. All right, I think that's all the questions. Great session. Thank you so much, Jerry and Zach. Appreciate it. We got one more, a couple more. All right. Jacqueline says she'll be on the training. No, they're not required to pay the agent. I mean, they're not required to pay the agent and they're not required to pay home sale, home sale plus. I mean, I think you gotta have a conversation with your client and say, hey, look, I'm not no one knows what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna market the hell out of this. I'm gonna do a bunch of open houses. I used to put up these bandit signs around the neighborhood, right? And I put it on I had it everywhere, right? And I mean, I tell you, there were many times I had more than 100 people come. So again, it's is your seller realistic? I mean, I gave that example. I'll never forget it. I busted my butt for a week and she tells me, oh, my house is worth 500,000 all day. Well, it wasn't. And the market only continued to go down. So, but no, we don't, it's like anything. If we don't sell the house, we don't earn our commission. All right, everyone, I'll send those links to those folks that requested it. Have a great evening. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jerry and Zach. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
All
everybody.
right, guys.
Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.